I hadn't seen him in 2 years. Not since the night he slammed the door and walked out of my life like it didn't mean anything. No goodbye, no explanation. Just vanished. So when I opened my front door that Saturday afternoon and saw him standing there, same crooked grin, same freckled nose, same damn boots, it felt like my brain short-circuited. "Hey," he said, like we'd spoken yesterday. I just stood there, one hand still on the doorknob, mouth dry. "Eli?" He gave a little wave. "I'm in town. Thought I'd stop by." Like it was normal. Like he didn't leave me completely wrecked. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile faltered. "I was hoping we could talk. I should have slammed the door. Should have told him to screw off. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped aside. He walked in like muscle memory, dropped his backpack by the coat rack, shrugged out of his jacket, scanned the place like it hadn't changed, because it hadn't. My life, embarrassingly, had gone on mostly the same since he left. Same beige walls, same black couch, same coffee mugs he used to tease me for hoarding. "You rearranged the shelves," he said, nodding toward the living room wall. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things." I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Eli?" He turned to me, expression softening. I messed up, and I didn't know how to fix it. 2 years. 2 damn years of silence. And now he wanted to fix it? I should have yelled. Instead, I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor. Eli stayed quiet for a minute, then sat down across from me. Close, but not touching. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers clasped like he was bracing himself. "I got scared," he said. "Back then. Of everything. Of you." I didn't look up. "You could have told me." "I know." Silence stretched between us like a rubber band. "I never stopped thinking about you," he added, barely above a whisper. I looked at him then. His eyes were tired, honest, familiar in a way I hated how much I missed. "Why now?" I asked. He swallowed. "Because I saw your post last week. The one about the breakup." My chest tightened. I had barely written 2 lines on Instagram. Just said I was single again. No details. No pity party. "And?" I asked, and I realized I still cared. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. I stared at him. At the same guy who used to fall asleep on my chest while we watched Netflix, who used to cook breakfast shirtless and sing off-key, who told me he loved me once in a parking lot after a fight, then took it back the next morning. "You can't just come back like this," I said, voice low. "I know, but I had to try." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small envelope, handed it to me like it was something fragile. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a photo. Us. Taken on a disposable camera at a beach we stumbled across in Oregon 2 summers ago. I was holding his hand. He was looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered. I felt the sting in my eyes before I could stop it. "I carried that with me everywhere," he said, "even when I didn't deserve to." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. He shifted closer. Not touching, just enough for me to feel the heat of him. "I'm not asking for everything," he said. "I just want a chance to talk, to be here, to try." I looked at the photo again, at the version of us I thought was gone. "All right," I said finally. "We can talk." We sat there in silence for a while. Eli fidgeted with the sleeve of his hoodie, same one he wore the night he left. I couldn't believe I remembered that detail, but it was burned into my brain, along with every part of that night. "How long are you in town?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. "Couple days," he said. "Visiting my mom. She moved back last year." I nodded, not sure what to do with that. "You didn't reach out then?" He shook his head, eyes on the floor. "I wasn't ready. And now you are?" "I think so." There was something about his voice, quiet, stripped down. Not the cocky version of him I used to fight with. Not the sarcastic guy who used jokes to dodge feelings. This was someone different. Or maybe just someone I hadn't seen in a long time. "You said you got scared," I said. "Of what?" He leaned back, exhaling hard. "Of being seen." of being with someone who actually knew me. I stared at him. That's a hell of a reason to disappear. I know. I didn't say it made sense. I wanted to be angry, to stay angry, but something in me had softened the second I saw his face again. After you left, I thought I'd done something wrong, I said. I went over every fight, every word. I blamed myself. He looked at me sharply. You didn't do anything wrong. That was all me. Didn't feel like it at the time. I know. There was a pause. Then he asked, "Can I show you something?" I gave a wary nod. He reached into his bag again and pulled out a small black notebook. Worn around the edges, pages sticking out at odd angles. He flipped it open and handed it to me. I glanced down. Poems, some half-finished, some messy, some barely legible, but they were all about me. About us. Lines like, "I still see him in headlights," and "I left, but he stayed in every version of home I tried to rebuild." My throat tightened. You wrote all this? I asked, flipping through slowly. Every time I thought about texting you and didn't, he said. I wrote instead. I looked up at him. He looked tired. Not in a worn-out way. More like someone who'd been carrying something too heavy for too long and finally set it down. I never stopped caring, he said. I just didn't know how to show it without breaking something. I set the notebook down. You broke something anyway. I know. His voice cracked a little on that one. Honest. Raw. I'm not asking for us to pick up where we left off, he said. I just want to be in the same room as you without feeling like a ghost. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was older. A little thinner. His eyes had that edge of wear you don't get from sleepless nights alone, but from years of shouldering guilt and never talking about it. Okay, I said. We can start there. He gave a slow nod, like he wasn't sure he deserved it. But I get to ask anything I want, I added. And you don't get to dodge, he smiled, small and real. Deal. Eli stayed for dinner. Not because we were ready for some cozy domestic reunion, but because neither of us wanted to end the conversation yet. It felt too fragile. Like if we let the moment go, it might slip back into silence for another 2 years. We didn't talk about the past anymore. Not directly. Instead, we drifted into safer topics. Music, work, how he hated his current city's public transit, and I complained about how expensive my rent was. It felt almost normal. Almost like before. By the time I realized it was dark out, the tension between us had settled into something softer. Still cautious, but not sharp. You want to crash here? I asked. I mean, if you don't want to go back to your mom's tonight. He looked surprised for half a second, then nodded. That'd be nice. I'll get the couch ready. He smiled faintly. Some things never change. I hesitated. Like what? You. Offering me a place, even after everything. I didn't answer. Just turned and walked to the hall closet for the spare blanket. When I came back, he was standing in the middle of the living room, looking at the shelf he'd mentioned earlier, the one I'd rearranged. You kept it, he said, pointing. I followed his gaze. A small framed photo of the beach. Oregon. Same trip as the picture he brought. He was behind the camera that day, not in the shot, but I remembered him laughing just out of frame. I'd almost taken that photo down 100 times, but I never did. Yeah, I said quietly. I kept it. He didn't say anything else, just sat on the edge of the couch and started untying his boots. I handed him the blanket, then hovered for a second. I wasn't sure if I should say goodnight or offer another apology or something, but he looked up at me and said, You don't have to stay away. It's okay to sit. So I did. We sat there in the dim living room light, the silence between us no longer tense, just quiet. He pulled the blanket around him like he used to, tucked under his chin, curled on his side, one hand resting near his chest. This feels weird, he said softly. What does? Being here, like nothing happened, but knowing everything did. Yeah, I said. I know what you mean. He looked at me then, really looked. Eyes tired but clear. I missed you, he said. I didn't respond, not because I didn't feel it, but because hearing it out loud knocked the wind out of me. He noticed the pause. Too much? I shook my head. Just not ready for the weight of that yet. He nodded slowly. Fair. After a moment, he added, I'll be here in the morning if you want to talk more. Something about the way he said that, gently, without pressure, made my chest tighten. Okay, I said. I stood up, gave him a last glance, then turned toward the hallway. But before I reached my room, he called out quietly, Hey. I stopped. Thanks for letting me in. I didn't turn around. You're lucky I still had a spare blanket. He laughed once. Soft, tired, familiar. And I went to bed wondering why that sound still hit so hard after all this time. I woke up before my alarm, not because I had somewhere to be, but because my brain refused to let me sleep in. It kept circling the same thought over and over. He's in your apartment, on your couch, right now. I padded out of my room slowly, rubbing my eyes, half expecting him to be gone, but he wasn't. Eli was sitting on the couch, legs crossed under the blanket, scrolling through his phone. The sunlight coming through the window made him look younger somehow. Softer, less weighed down. When he saw me, he gave a small smile. Morning, morning, I said, trying not to stare. He held up a mug. I made coffee. Hope I didn't mess up your weird system. I blinked. You remembered how I take it? He shrugged. You always hated when people added sugar, said it ruined the taste. I wasn't sure what hit me harder, that he remembered, or that he made me coffee like it was just another Tuesday morning. I took the mug and sat on the arm of the couch, sipping quietly. For a few minutes, neither of us said much. Just the clink of ceramic and the faint sound of birds outside the window. Then he asked, How long were you with that guy? 6 months, he nodded. Serious? I shrugged. We tried. It was fine. I think I was mostly just tired of being alone. He looked down at his hands. I know that feeling. I watched him for a second. What about you? He gave a half shrug. Dated around, nothing stuck. There was a pause. Then I asked the question I'd been sitting on since he showed up. Did you ever think about coming back sooner? He looked at me. Every time I passed through this city. Yeah, but I kept telling myself you were probably better off. And now I think I was just scared you'd be happy without me. That landed harder than I expected. I didn't know whether to be angry or flattered or something in between. I wasn't, I said quietly. He looked up. No? I shook my head. I moved on. Kind of. But I never stopped wondering. You know, where you were. If you ever thought about it. He was quiet for a second, then said, Every time I tried to move on, it just felt like I was pretending. I sipped my coffee to keep from saying something stupid. Then he added, I don't expect anything from you. I just want to be in your life again, however that looks. I looked at him, at the man who once knew me better than anyone, and then became a stranger. You don't just get to pick up where we left off, I said. I know, he replied, but, I added, you can stick around, for now. His smile was soft. That's more than I hoped for. We finished our coffee in silence, but it didn't feel empty. If anything, it felt like something was starting. Eli didn't leave that day. He helped me cook lunch, which mostly meant he hovered awkwardly near the stove and made sarcastic comments about my knife skills. I made fun of him for not remembering how to use my weird panini press, and he made the same dumb joke about chef's kisses that he used to when we lived together. It felt easy. Almost suspiciously easy. We ended up eating on the balcony, sitting on those cheap fold-up chairs I always said I'd replace. He kicked his feet up on the railing and leaned back like he owned the place again. "I miss this," he said, looking out at the skyline. "My shitty balcony?" he smirked. "Your company." I rolled my eyes, but I felt that little twinge in my chest. Around 3 p.m., it started to rain. Light at first, then harder, soaking the air with that clean, quiet smell that makes you want to nap. I went to grab laundry from the dryer. When I came back out, Eli was still on the couch, now lying on his side, legs stretched out, one arm tucked under his head. "I could fall asleep right here," he mumbled, eyes half closed. I tossed a dry shirt at him. "Then use a real pillow, not your elbow." He smiled and shifted, grabbing the throw pillow from behind him. I sat down at the far end of the couch, still folding towels, the rain tapping softly on the windows. I didn't mean to sit there long. I figured he'd doze off, and I'd get up and go do something productive. But then he said, "Come sit closer. You're acting like I'm gonna bite." "I'm not avoiding you," I said. "You're sitting like I've got the plague." I rolled my eyes but moved a little closer, just enough to be in the same space. His eyes were still half-lidded, lashes resting lightly against his cheeks, the kind of calm expression you only get when someone really lets go. "You look tired," I said. "I haven't slept well in months," he murmured. "This is the first place that's felt quiet in a long time." That hit something in me, because, for all the hurt and confusion, I knew that feeling. That craving for a place that doesn't ask anything of you. I didn't realize I'd stopped folding towels. I didn't realize I'd let myself lean back into the cushions. I didn't realize how close he'd shifted until I felt the edge of his arm brush against mine. Just a little. Not on purpose. Or maybe it was. Neither of us moved. I closed my eyes, just for a second, and then I woke up an hour later with my head resting against his shoulder. The rain had stopped. The room was dim. The air was still. Eli was awake. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. His breathing was slow even. His hand was resting lightly on my arm. I tensed. Instinct, not fear. But when I moved to sit up, he whispered, "It's okay." I stayed. For 5 more minutes, then 10. Then I whispered, "I forgot how good this felt." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Me too." We didn't kiss. We didn't even look at each other. But something shifted. Something opened. And neither of us reached to close it again. After that nap, something was different. Not in a dramatic way. Not like we woke up and suddenly everything was solved. But something in the air between us had shifted. Softened. Whatever tension was still there, it wasn't keeping us apart anymore. Eli stayed for dinner. Again, we ate pasta on the floor, like we used to when we didn't feel like clearing off the table. My back against the couch, his knee brushing mine, plates balanced on our laps. At some point, he looked up from his food and said, "Did you ever think we'd see each other again?" I shrugged. "Sometimes." But I told myself not to count on it. He nodded slowly, like he understood. "I thought about it a lot. What I'd say if I saw you again." "Yeah?" I asked. "What'd you come up with?" "Mostly," he gave a half laugh, "that I owed you the truth." I didn't say anything, just waited. He set his plate aside and leaned back on his hands. Back when I left, it wasn't just about fear or confusion. I think I thought if I let myself really be with you, I'd lose whatever version of myself I was trying to protect. "That version sucked," I said, not even trying to sound gentle. He grinned. "I know. Turns out it wasn't worth protecting." We sat like that for a while, just breathing the same space. Then he asked, "You ever think about us? Like, what we could have been?" That question didn't come lightly. I knew it had been on his mind since he showed up at my door. I just didn't think he'd say it out loud. I stared at the ceiling. "Yeah," I said finally, "more than I want to admit." He nodded. Not smug, just sad. Me too. But thinking about it and going back to it, Those aren't the same thing, I added. I know. I turned to look at him. So what do you want now? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, eyes steady. I want to start over, he said. Not rewind, not pretend nothing happened. I want to earn a place in your life again. I swallowed hard. And if we just stay friends? I asked. If that's all I have to offer, then I'll take it, he said. Because I'd rather be near you than nowhere at all. I didn't know what to say to that. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard him say. The next day, he was still there. We didn't plan it, and I didn't ask him to stay. But when I woke up, he was in the kitchen boiling water like it was his place, like 2 years hadn't passed, and somehow it didn't feel invasive. It felt nice. We ended up walking through the neighborhood after breakfast. No destination. Just a slow loop through familiar streets, pausing at the old bookstore he used to drag me into, the corner coffee place that had changed names twice since he left. I forgot how quiet this city feels, he said. Sometimes it's too quiet. He looked at me then, like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. We walked in silence for a bit, his shoulder brushing mine every now and then. It wasn't deliberate, but it wasn't not deliberate either. Back at my place, he hesitated at the door. I should probably head out, he said, towing the doormat. You don't have to, I replied, a little too quickly. He smiled at that. I know. But he didn't come inside. Instead, he turned to me and said, Look, I don't want to push anything. I don't want to mess up whatever this is. I nodded. You're not. He studied my face for a second. Okay. Then can I? I thought he was going to ask to kiss me, but instead he reached out and held my hand. Just held it. Fingers wrapping around mine, warm and solid, grounding in a way that made my chest ache. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It wasn't even romantic in the traditional sense, but it was everything. When he let go, I didn't want him to. He saw that. I could tell. I'll text you, he said, already stepping back. You better. And then he walked down the stairs, hands in his pockets, head slightly turned like he was waiting for me to stop him. I didn't, not yet, but I didn't go back inside right away, either. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring after him, my hand still tingling where his fingers had been. He texted later that night, just one message. Today felt real. Thanks for not slamming the door in my face. I stared at it for a while, then typed, It still might happen. He replied instantly, Fair. We didn't talk every day after that, but often enough. Sometimes it was casual, memes, song links, a photo of a dog he passed on the street. Other times, it was heavier. Late-night messages about guilt, about memory, about the pieces of ourselves we only let each other see. He wasn't perfect. Neither was I. But he showed up, again and again. Not with flowers or big speeches, but with presence. 3 weeks later, it was raining again. Same soft, steady drizzle that made the city feel like it was wrapped in a blanket. I'd just gotten home from work, dropped my bag on the floor, when I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't loud, just 2 taps. I knew before I opened it. Eli stood there, hoodie soaked, hair dripping. I forgot my umbrella, he said. You forgot your timing, I replied. It's dinner time, he smirked. Got anything in the fridge? I stepped aside. He walked in like he never left. While I reheated leftovers, he hovered by the counter, hands in his pockets. He kept watching me, and I finally said, What? He shrugged. You feel like home, I blinked. It wasn't the first time someone had said that to me, but it was the first time it didn't scare me. After dinner, we ended up on the couch again, movie playing, not watching. Just there. And then, finally, he asked the question, Can I stay the night? I turned to him. The couch is still yours. He looked at me a little too long, then nodded. I'll take it. He didn't argue, didn't push. And that's what made me say, just before I turned out the light, or, the bed's big enough, if you want. He paused, then nodded again, Slower this time. We didn't touch. Not at first. But somewhere in the middle of the night, I felt the shift. His hand found mine under the blanket. No words. Just warmth. Just the press of fingers against skin, steady and real. I squeezed once. He didn't let go.